The next update has to do with immigration, a burning topic, never more so than these days as the Trump administration tries to deflect people's upset about the economic and political realities of our society by acting as though getting rid of immigrants is going to solve much. So let's talk a little bit about immigrants. First of all, this notion, which I need to deal with, that we ought to have immigrants that are highly educated rather than immigrants that are not. Let's go into that. Number one, it's bizarre coming from Mr. Trump, who wants to make America great again, because if America was great, because that's what it means to make it great again, then it had to do that greatness with a flow of immigrants, the likes of which no other country on earth has ever had. So when we were great, it was we were a country of immigrants. And guess what? From the beginning, the overwhelming majority of immigrants had no formal education whatsoever. They were uneducated people. And it took the United States to show the world that you may be uneducated in some ways, but you have lots of ingenuity, lots of skill, lots of commitment, and lots of hard work that can make a country great. What in the world is the lesson you draw from that? It's not the one you hear in the newspaper. But there's another economics of immigration I want to drive home. Let's suppose the United States were successful in getting educated people to come into the United States. Let's go over what that means. The country in which you are born and in which you go to school spends a great deal of money providing you with an education. It is very expensive to have schools, hire teachers, provide learning materials, etc., etc. What in the world do you think we're doing to the rest of the world if we outsource the costs of education to every other country in the world and then say when you get to be 21 years of age or 25 or 30, then you come to the United States? The other country bears all the costs of giving you productivity, and the United States gets the benefit of all the productivity you provide when you work. That's a way of making a rich country, the United States, richer, and the poor countries from which these educated people come, even poorer. They have to bear the costs of the education, and they don't get the benefit because the person leaves. That's a real serious problem, and it has been a serious problem for a long time. To act as though there's no cost to the rest of the world means that you're going to make the inequality in the world between rich and poor countries worse by this sort of immigration. Take everybody. Otherwise, you haven't learned the lessons of history, and you're not doing the world right now any good whatsoever. Inequality between men and women we've talked about. Let's talk about the inequality between black and white. I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but every now and then it's really good. Let me give you the results of all the statistics that have been done for 2016, the last year for which we have it. I'm going to compare black and white. 3 statistics, real simple. What's the ratio between what white people earn and black people earn in their jobs? Median hourly wage. 50% people get more, 50% people get less. But it's a good way to compare. Black people get 75% of what white people get. Median hourly wage. Okay, now let's move to the household. What's the median household income when you put together what husband and wife or partners are both earning? Now already we're starting to shrink. 60%. African American median household is 60% of the white one. But now we get to median family net worth. How much property, how much wealth does the family, the average family, the median family have? And remember why the wealth of a family is important. If you have a sudden illness, if you have a sudden accident, if something in life happens that costs a bunch of money, or that interrupts your work so you don't earn income for a while, you turn to your savings, your wealth, to see you through a hard period. In 2016, the median family net worth of a black family in America was 10% of a white family's. White families had 10 times more wealth to turn to if something unfortunate happened to them in their job, in their health, in their personal life with a divorce or whatever it might be. This is a capitalism that has not overcome inequality. It's a system that discriminates. It's a system that systematically puts African American people at a disadvantage. There's no way out of that. And one of the consequences is, in a way, my last update for today. One of the consequences of that inequality. And this has to do with a report issued in January 2018 by the United States Civil Rights Commission, a government body in Washington. And it talks about, the name of this report, Public Education Funding Inequity. And basically, here's what this report finds. That students from ethnic, that's a nice way of saying not white, students from ethnic and poor neighborhoods, guess what? They get poor schools, poor education, low spending per pupil. In other words, we haven't lived up to the so-called promise of America called equal opportunity. We haven't given people from poor backgrounds, from poor families, people who have 10% of the net worth that white people have, we haven't given them a way out by giving them decent schools. It's not that we haven't given them extra schooling, which would help get things equal. Even given them equal schooling, which couldn't have been expected to undo the other inequalities. No, we've done worse than that. We've provided them, according to this report, poorer schools, poorer quality educations than we have provided to the white folks in this society. In other words, American capitalism, criticized in the past for the racial inequality that has been so bad a problem in our society, has not only not solved that problem, but here we are, half a century after the famous 1954 education decision of the Supreme Court that said separate and equal is not possible, that if you're separate, you're going to be unequal. That was wise of the Supreme Court then. 50 years later, we see how wise it was. This is a system that can look nowhere else to explain the racial tensions, the racial inequality, the racial conflicts that beset us as a nation. Doesn't have to look anywhere else but to the economic system we have. It has failed to overcome that inequality. It has failed even to live up to the commitments its leaders have made to remedy the discrimination, the inequality, to live up to what its own Supreme Court said was the law of the land. At the very least, give equal education to the unequally treated people in our society. This system didn't succeed. And one more educational reform is going to be no more successful than all those we've lived through over the last half century. The system that works this way, that thwarts and frustrates all these reforms, is the problem. You've got to change a system, give everybody a decent job so that we don't have the inequalities to begin with, and the rest can begin to be addressed. We have a long way to go, but denying the systemic problem is no way forward.